If you've been intrigued by what you've been seeing on this channel and are considering moving to Saipan, if you'd like a sunnier, simpler, slower lifestyle while still being part of the US, then start with the Saipan Living Relocation Guide, an A to Z reference of everything you'll need to adjust to life here on Saipan, Tinian, or Rota. Order here on YouTube, on Amazon, or at saipanliving.com. Then consider a phone or Zoom consultation where you can ask any question at all to plan your move to Saipan. Then when you're ready to take the leap, you can sign up for a reconnaissance tour before you move, or a relocation tour. Visit different neighborhoods, see what life is like, get your paperwork in order, your PO box, your ID, so you can hit the ground running. As a bonus, if you sign up for any tour or consultation, you'll get a copy of the Fast Track Kit that has all the forms and documents and applications you need to start your residency. My name is Walt Goodridge. Let's make your move to Saipan simple, fast, and stress-free. Okay, testing. Hello everyone, my name is Walt Goodridge, the Jamaican on Saipan, and welcome to the Discover Saipan live stream. Now, hopefully everything is going well with you guys, and later on in this broadcast I will share with you whether woke libtards are welcome on my tours or not. The answer may surprise you, or will it? Okay, so if you're new to the channel, my name is Walt, and I've been living on Saipan for many years now, and over the years I've written books on the island and done interviews, and I do tours here on Saipan as well. So people have gotten into the habit of asking me my perspectives on life here and various goings on the island. So with that said, we've been doing this live stream now for several months, primarily for people who are interested in relocating to Saipan. So if you have any questions that fall into that category in terms of life here on the island or what's going on over in Tinian, and I'll get into that a little later, feel free to ask any questions. But welcome to the live stream, and let's get started. If you're watching, please do let me know that the sound is coming through okay, hopefully, and I will proceed. Okay, so right now on Saipan, things are a little slow. I've mentioned that before, and I mentioned that just because I want people to have realistic expectations in terms of what life here is like now. I came in the mid-2000s, and the garment factories were still in operation at that time. Tourism was booming. We had mostly tourists from Japan, but also Russia and China and Korea. And right now, however, things are a bit slow. So tourism is down. But as I always mention, when I run into people on Saipan who stop me in the supermarket and who thank me for doing the channel and thank me for writing the book, the Saipan Living Relocation Guide, then I always ask them if they are happy with their decision. And everyone to a person has said that wherever they were coming from, whether it was stateside or Hawaii, or that they are happy with their decision and that life here is still great, still saner and calmer, more humane than they left stateside. So things are still a better deal. And for myself as well, I've been thinking about this. Even as things get a little slower now, it's still a better deal for me than where I was coming from, which was New York. I lived in Queens, and then Manhattan, and then Bronx, and it's still life here. I prefer it's a much it's a slower pace, smaller community, friendlier interaction in general. Everywhere I go in the Pacific Asia region, it's the human interaction is a much friendlier, much easier. less combative, less hostile. For me, the cost of living is much lower. Rents are cheaper. And I mentioned these for new people on the island. Um, a one-bedroom apartment, for example, in Queens, which is not one of the higher-priced boroughs, could easily go for 1,200, 1,500 or more. Here on Saipan, you can get one bedroom for 400, 500, 600, probably even less. So overall, I find the lifestyle here much more, and it's sunny. I definitely prefer sunshine rather than cold weather. So for me, it's much nicer living here than stateside. And someone also asked in terms of Guam, and my response to that, the question was why Saipan over Guam. And as I mentioned in the last live stream, for me, there wasn't a choice at the time that I was making my decision. My friend told me about Saipan, and he hadn't been to Guam, I don't think. So he was raving about Saipan. And without having any other alternatives in the region, I decided that this is the place that I wanted to be. And 2 months after he introduced me to it, at a house party in Brooklyn. I was here on a one-way flight from the States. So, but now that I've lived here, I've seen the differences between Guam and Saipan, and I definitely do prefer Saipan. Again, smaller community, less manicured, um, less traffic, and less expensive here, and more of that country style, small town feel that I tend to prefer rather than the big city feel of life. So those are some of my reasons for choosing Saipan. And as I've written books, as I've done more tours, as I've um, exposed Saipan to people who otherwise wouldn't have known about it, more and more people are considering relocating here. And there are some advantages as well, tax advantages to living here. In addition to the cost of living being cheaper, the uh, tax situation is a little more um, there are some perks to living on Saipan, and I've been going over some of those actually as I've been updating the 2026 relocation guide. And just as an update, the guide is less than 24 hours away from being released officially. I'm actually working diligently on it right now. I was up at 4 o'clock this morning, tweaking some of the links in the relocation guide, but it'll be released. I'll send the initial version 1.0, to anyone who has ordered in the past. And as I tweak it further, there'll be revisions, version 1.2, 1.3. So that's scheduled for the next few hours. So if it's a little delayed, please bear with me. All right, so please feel free to ask any questions at this time. If you're watching, okay, the chat seems to be working, so please do. And I'd like to test out some of the functionality of the live stream. So if you're so inclined, if you've been appreciating what uh, I've been sharing over the past few months, please feel free to do a super chat, or so that I can test how these things work. Okay, let's see, what else do I have to share with you. Um, let's see. So the Discover Saipan website, that's the site through which I do my tours, that's also been revamped. So please check that out as well, discoversaipan.com. I have information on the tours that I do, and also merchandise as well that might be of interest to you, t-shirts, mugs, that sort of thing. All right, so um, definitely ask some questions. Let's jump into some of those that have accumulated over the last week. All right, so Inspire One Light says, thanks for sharing I like the multicultural aspects of Saipan. I've gathered that Christianity is the main religion on Saipan, but as long as people behave in a respectful way in daily encounters, and a live and let live attitude, does a live and let live attitude prevail vis-a-vis others having different religious affiliations or perspectives? Absolutely. Um, Here on Saipan, just to give you a little context for those who may be unfamiliar, we have a unique, because we're here in the Pacific region, Asia Pacific region, we also have a, Saipan also has its own immigration, or for many years had its own immigration policy and own labor policy. So as a result, over the years, in order to man the garment stations and the tourist industry, we have contract workers from China, from the Philippines, from Korea, Japan, from other Pacific islands, so Bangladesh as well. So the mix here is really unique, unlike anything you'll see most other places. So as a result, the people here tend to be quite tolerant uh, of other religions, other lifestyles. So it's really an interesting place. My landlord might be Chinese. A good friend is Filipino. My dentist may be Korean. So the teachers at school could be a mix of Filipino or mainlanders. So it's a really eclectic mix, and people uh, there is no people may whisper behind other to their friends and neighbors about certain idiosyncrasies that exist among the groups, and I'll talk about that in a second. But there is no uh, outward blatant hostility that I've seen when it comes to people practicing their religion. In fact, yes, you're right. It is primarily Christian and primarily Catholic, because the indigenous population was colonized by Spain for close to 200 years, 175, 200 years, starting in 1520 when Magellan landed, 1521 or so. So the indigenous culture of the Chamorros has been shaped by the Spanish, and as a result, it is a very Catholic community here on Saipan. Similarly, the 20,000 Filipinos who comprise the workforce, they are also coming from a Spanish colonial background. So they too are heavily Catholic. And as a result, you have, for example, I live near a church here, and there are at least three different services on Sunday. There's an English service, there's a Chamorro service, that's the indigenous population, and there's a Tagalog service. So catering to the yeah, mix of individuals living here language-wise, there is that tolerance and that catering to the different groups who live here. So it's really, really interesting. Unfortunately, uh, a little bit more context. We have a unique CW visa program here on Saipan, and I've talked about this before, but in terms of the eclectic mix, we have a CW1 visa program. So workers who are here in the tourism industry and the restaurant industry are here from the Philippines, from China, Bangladesh on a CW1 visa, contract worker visa, which is essentially a work permit. So those individuals are sponsored, if you will, by employers. And if they lose their job for whatever reason, then they will have to find another employer who's willing to sponsor them, and so they can stay on the island. So, unfortunately, the powers that be in Washington for many years now, from the Obama and Biden administrations until now, have been pushing to eliminate the CW program in order to make jobs more available to U.S. Citizens, ostensibly. So right now, based on the quota that has been systematically reduced each year, then it's scheduled to end in 2029, I believe. So again, based on what's on the schedule, the CW program is supposed to be phased out by 2029. So uh, that good mix of diversity and the eclectic mix of religions and languages and cultures may cease to exist at that time if things go the way that they are scheduled to. Now, that's a federal decision. However, we do have a non-voting delegate in Congress, uh, Kim Hines, who, similar to our previous delegate, they have made it their mission to make the situation here in the CNMI, Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, more known among the powers in Washington, so that certain laws that are made in Washington that might adversely affect us here are on the radar. So the move, since the people in Washington don't often know how those regulations affect us here on the ground, then our non-voting delegate forms alliances with different caucuses in Washington in order to get certain um, dispensations enacted for our benefit here. So if things go the way they're scheduled, then the CW1 program may be phased out. But if our delegate is successful in turning the tide, then things could be extended a bit longer. At least that's the hope. So yep, really eclectic mix of folks here, and that's one thing that I really value about life here on the island. Okay, now for those of you who are also thinking of moving here, someone else brought up another point in terms of um, their affinity for or their desire to live in Asia. Um, and have a home base here on Saipan. So because of Saipan's proximity to Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, China, the Philippines, many people who like to travel in that region, myself included, will use Saipan as a home base, if you will, from which to see the rest of the world in this region. So many guys who live here, guys and men and women who live here, will have a home base here and do a lot of traveling around the region. I personally have been to China, Singapore, Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Macau, Hong Kong in my travels around here. And it's because I'm a green card holder, permanent resident, I can't stay more than 6 months to a year in those countries. So I would have to leave, check back in here in Saipan, which is part of the US, and then I can plan another trip when my finances allow and when my supporters exercise and execute their support. So, yep, it's for me, I find it a nice way to live, much different from how I was living in the stateside. So, all right, great, great, great. Thanks for that, Inspire Light. Any other questions? Please feel free. The chat is working. All right, what else can we talk about here? Um, okay. Okay, so one of the things that people sometimes will ask about is uh, the concept of island fever, they call it. So living on a small island like this. Somebody asked a question. I don't have it in front of me, but someone wanted to know, do I suffer from island fever? So, for those of you who may not be familiar, island fever is that feeling that you get when you are uh, trapped on a little island for months and months on end, and depending on your tolerance, it could be years, weeks before you feel that pressing need to escape and to see the wider world. And I guess because I grew up in Jamaica, a small island, maybe I don't have that island fever, but I do have that travelers, that nomads wanderlust. So for me, the desire to see the world, I'm not sure if it's directly a result of needing to escape from Saipan and the small island more than it is simply to see the wider world, which is something that I've always had, that desire to be free. I actually feel more comfortable when I'm in a foreign country traveling. So so for me that's something exhilarating. So I don't know if I suffer from island fever so much. I like the island lifestyle. I just also have the desire to experience different cultures. When I go to China, when I go to Cambodia, I don't focus on the tourists, the major tourist sites. In fact, I've been to China several times and I've never been to the Great Wall, but I might do that. But what I like to do is to pretend that I am a local there and just shop and take the bus and walk around and live life and experience life as if I were living there, to get into the mindset of a local resident. How do they see the world? How do they shop from day to day? And I've been somewhat successful in doing that, except that when I go to Cambodia, when I go to Vietnam, when I go to China, for some reason, no matter how much I try to assimilate into the culture, they can somehow tell I'm not Chinese. I'm not sure exactly how they're able to do that, but my cover gets blown, and they treat me like the exotic foreigner. So but yes, I like, again, I just like to travel when finances allow. Okay. The next question that was asked was, how long have I been here? Now, I used to tell people when I came, I've stopped now because I'm starting to date myself. So I've stopped telling, but I came in the mid to late, somewhere between the mid to late 2000s. And at that time, as I mentioned, the garment factories were in vogue, so the island was much more populated than it is now. Let me give you a Tinian update. So, um, I was on Tinian just about 4 days ago. I believe it was February 24th. I was there, and the runway construction construction continues. As you may or may not be familiar, right now, two-thirds of the island of Tinian is leased by the military. Tinian is the island from which the Enola Gay and the B-29 bomber and Boxcar, another B-29 bomber, took off in 1945 to bomb Hiroshima and Nagasaki, respectively. So it's a very historic island, and the runways that were built to accommodate the B-29s, 10,000-foot runways, have remained intact with the original pavement for the last 80 years. However, just in the last year or so, contracts have been awarded on Tinian to repave the runways to shore up the U.S. military's presence in this region beyond just Guam. And so the runways that have historically been accessible to individuals, and you could drive on the original runways that the B-29 bombers used. Now, however, there is only about exactly 4/10 of the runway that's still in its original condition. I know that because my last client and I actually set the odometer and uh, drove from the very end of beginning of runway able to where the cones are now set up indicating the end of the runway and the beginning of the construction. And I'll do a video on that in the next few days or so to give you another update. But the construction continues full force, many earth movers there on runway Able. The others have not been touched. We were able to drive on runway Baker as well, but only 4/10 of the original runway still remains intact. So if you want to grab a piece of that runway, you'd best move quickly. So that's the latest. I spoke to one or two contract workers, construction workers there, and they weren't able to tell me exactly what the schedule was. Next time I go, perhaps I'll seek out the project manager for that, for the construction, and see if we can get some more details filled in. But no schedule right now. Information may be on some of the government contract websites, but usually those may not be as accurate and may not be as updated as they could be. So it's better to ask on the ground. All right, so let's see what else. Okay, so any more questions coming in? All right, so since I did advertise this, let me answer the question that you might all be waiting for as to whether woke libtards are welcome on my tours. So let me give you a little background in terms of how that came up. I was speaking to a teenager a few days ago and explaining to him, he had asked me to help him set up an online business and coach him on some of the uh, nuance of doing business online and doing business in general. And during the course of that conversation, we happened to talk about different topics, and he happened to talk about his girlfriend. And he mentioned, uh, I forget the exact context and topic that we were talking about, but I'll give you the structure of what he said. He said something similar to my girlfriend. Let's say my girlfriend is a vegetarian, and this girlfriend lives with her mother and father. So my girlfriend is a vegetarian. Then his next statement was something like, "Yeah, they don't eat meat," or that was a construct. He first said, "My girlfriend is something," and then he said, "They don't eat meat," and I um, immediately thought, okay, he switched to they, so that must mean he's now talking about the family, which made sense. She's a vegetarian, and they don't shop in the supermarket in the meat section. So that made sense. But to be clear, because I suspected what was going on, I said to him, "You said they, you mean the whole family?" And he said, "No, just her." So he was using the they in the way that people are using it these days as a preferred pronoun to describe a single individual. So I asked him, because this is someone who I'm coaching, and I'm coaching him on how to interact in business and communicate. I asked him, I said, "Look, do me a favor. When you speak to me, I'd like you to speak English, please." All right? Because you switch to they and you're speaking about one person. She is a vegetarian. She does not eat meat. It's one person. We know who we're talking about. So please use the correct word. And so he said, uh, we laughed about it for a while, and then he said, what if one of your tour clients wants you to use a particular pronoun?" And I thought about it, and that it was a very deep question, very profound question, because he's right. There are certain requests that people may have. Typically, though, my guests tend to be older folks, for the most part, who have not bought into the destruction of the English language in that regard. This is so it can usually communicate in classic English, and we have no issues with that. But he is right. That is a question I needed to consider. What would my stance be? What would my policy be on folks who insist on mangling the language that way? So I thought about it, and here's my response. Here on Saipan, we have many people for whom English is not their first language. All right. I've had girlfriends from Thailand or from China who don't speak English perfectly. And I extend to those individuals and the majority population here, that's a courtesy. I do my best to understand what the individual is saying. I don't quibble about the incorrect conjugation or the incorrect uh, agreement between verbs and nouns and that sort of thing. I do my best to understand the individual, and then I communicate accordingly, and I don't correct them unless they want me to correct them, unless they ask me to correct them. So if I can do that to people who don't speak English as a first language, as their primary language, then I can surely do that to people who are choosing not to speak English and to speak some derivation, some modern day woke derivation of the English language. So my policy is that um, I'm not going to correct anyone. I generally don't correct people when I give tours unless they ask me to. So I will extend that same courtesy, and I won't correct anyone, and I won't insist that they speak classic English. And similarly, I won't participate in that destruction of the English language as well. So they can speak any way they want to, and whatever version of English they choose to speak, and I will do my best to understand them. But I will not participate in the delusion. I will speak classic English. Similarly, I could not expect someone who doesn't speak English to suddenly miraculously speak English for my benefit. Similarly, I am not going to um, suddenly speak a version of English that I don't speak in order to miraculously overnight just to please somebody else. So that's my stance. So you can speak any way you want to. Um, but I won't be joining you in the destruction of the language. So that's my stance. So when I referred to woke libtards, I was simply referring to that particular aspect, the language aspect, because as you guys know who've watched the channel in the past, you know that's one of my pet peeves. I'm a stickler for that. Um, and I've done a few videos on the grammar, being a grammar Karen or a grammar Nazi. So with that said, something else just occurred to me. You know, there may come a point where this channel has outlived its usefulness. So I'm going to have to think of something to expand the scope of the channel a bit. So maybe I'll turn this into the Saipan Language School ESL from the SLS Saipan Language School and focus on some grammar, the grammar faux pas that people make. Because I have put some of those on my Walt Goodridge channel, but maybe I'll do it here as well since I do have more subscribers and followers here. So that's my rant. So yes, all are welcome, but I will not liberals and conservatives and everyone is welcome, but I will not join you in whatever delusion you may be living in. And that applies to both sides as well. There are most of my guests as I said, tend to be of an older generation, so they have different concerns and speak and have worldviews that tend to be more conservative and uh, less I don't want to say progressive or so. But either side, I typically don't get into discussions of politics or religion just because I know better than that. But I did have an interesting discussion with a fellow just the last tour. Really interesting, really cool. And we were able to have a discussion. He claims he identifies with being an independent. He said he was once Democrat and then Republican, and now he considers himself an independent. And I am not an American citizen, so I am neither Democrat nor Republican. Uh, Probably lean more conservative in my worldview, though. But because I don't have a horse in the race or a dog in the fight, as it goes, I we were able to have a very interesting discussion about how things are developing in stateside on the mainland. And one of the things that I've heard on several occasions from people who have visited Saipan is that they perceive things as getting a bit crazy on stateside, and so are thankful that at least a little piece of America exists here that still retains some semblance of normalcy and sanity that they can latch on to. So, as I've mentioned in the past, this island tends to be more, when I say conservative, I don't want you to assume I mean it in the same sense that it's used stateside. That's one of the other unique things about this island is that the terms Democrat or Republican or even and the terms liberal versus conservative have slightly different meanings here. Because if you recall from reading my book, you would see that this island only became part of the U.S. From a political standpoint um, around the 80s. Everyone went to bed on November 3rd, 1986, as part of the Pacific Trust Territory, and woke up the next morning, November 4th, 1986, uh, U.S. citizens. So the um, institution of the Democrat versus Republican dichotomy didn't occur until just very recently. So it does, the people who align themselves with Republicans or Democrats from within the indigenous population are probably doing so for different reasons than the average mainlander. And that does figure into how they perceive of themselves, how they perceive of the power structure in on the mainland, and what the definition of Republican versus Democrat and liberal versus conservative actually means here. And I won't get into some of the nuance here, but there is a difference. But right now, there is a Republican governor uh, um, in charge. So, just some really unique things about the island. Feel free to ask any questions. Welcome, Michael the Saint. Thanks for tuning in. But let's see if we might have a slightly shortened version of our live stream today. All right, what else can I share with you? Okay, okay. We have questions about the bus system. Okay. All right. So this question has come up before, but since we do have new people checking in, one of the things that questions that often comes up is if it makes sense to ship a car from the States here. And as I've mentioned before, only if that car is so unique and you've had it customized to such a degree um, that you can't do without whatever that customization is, and or it would be difficult to do this to replicate that same customization here. Otherwise, the expense that you would incur shipping a car here and the weight and the possible damage that might occur, I don't think is worth it. I had a friend here who shipped his car from here stateside, and the cost alone, I think, was maybe close to 5,000. If you're interested, the new edition of the relocation guide, I think I'll put prices in that one, so you'll be able to see prices. So I want to do a little research first before I quote an exact price. But he ran into some a little bit of difficulty with delays and with um, the car seemingly, and I don't want to accuse anyone of this, but it seemed that the car was he has a tracker that can track the car's movement and mileage, and it seemed that the vehicle was has traveled more than it should, given what we expected the trajectory of the shipment should have been. So anyway, I would not suggest shipping a car. Here on Saipan, we have people who are leaving. We have doctors coming and going. We have teachers coming and going. We have people, contractors coming and going. So people will sometimes buy cars and then get reassigned by their job someplace else. Some people may get their green cards and then decide to move stateside or move on to another location. So there are always used cars for sale, and so I think it would be easier here to find something used and find a motivated seller than it would be to ship your car from overseas. So that, and if your car is not of a make and model that is easily serviced here on Saipan, then you might be in for some disappointment as well. So we have certain cars that are very popular, and Toyotas, Nissans, Ford pickups that uh, make it easy for you to repair, to diagnose and repair. So if you bring a car that is not normally serviced and repaired here, then you might be in for more expense, a longer wait, and you might end up having to lease or rent a different car anyway. I've seen situations where cars, in fact, there's a stretch, I think a stretch BMW, a stretch Mercedes or something that someone brought in to cater to maybe the student graduation market or the tourists who want to ride around in a stretch limo. And shortly after it arrived, you can still see it just sitting in a lot somewhere because I speculate that they were simply not able to get the parts or the service or the diagnostic machines required to service the car. So it had a short-lived use, and then it ends up sitting and just gathering dust for years and years and years. So something to consider about shipping your car here. I would not advise it. Again, everyone's situation is different unless you have some really unique situation and customization that would warrant that. All right. Okay. So, with that said, um, let's see. Running out of questions here. Oh, and as far as getting cars and apartments, one of the things that you might be able to do even stateside is check out some of the Facebook groups. There are, if you do a search on Facebook for Facebook Saipan rentals, Saipan buy and sell, Saipan used cars, you'll come across groups through which you might be able to become aware of things for sale, apartments for rent, even homes for rent, and get a sense of what the going rate is if you're thinking of relocating and looking for accommodations. All right, but my suggestion, as always, is if you are coming here, if you can afford to do a reconnaissance tour first, come check it out, see the lay of the land, stay for a week, then you can stay in a budget hotel for as little as $70 a night. That's one. I've known folks who've done that, fellas who've done that, and then gone back, then made their decision while they're here, then gone back and prepared, and then returned. I know a few people who've done that. Uh, so that would be my best suggestion. And then once you get here, one of the things I do during a relocation tour or reconnaissance tour is actually scout different neighborhoods and actually look for rent signs on apartment buildings. Some of those may never be listed on Facebook. There are some people here who simply don't interact and engage with the internet, with social media. They do things still on a cash basis, on a word of mouth basis, on a face-to-face interpersonal basis. So there are certain apartments that will never be listed on Facebook. So your best bet to find those would be to drive around town, as I do, and look for signs, or just stop into apartments that look like a place you'd like to live, and just ask some of the tenants who are there how to get in touch with the landlord, and you call up and find out what's available. That's how I've gotten my apartments. That's how I've helped other people find theirs as well. So that tends to be the best way once you get here. Okay, so that's hope that answers that question. All right, good, good, good. Um, the You could talk about the economy right now. I sort of mentioned that uh, earlier in terms of things being a little depressed in the economy. Um, but so on that note, let's see what else. If we have any questions, if not, then we're going to wrap this up with a short one. We're almost at our 3/4 point anyway. All right, guys. So thanks again for those of you who purchased copies of the Saipan Living Relocation Guide. Do extend a little patience with me. I'm actually putting the finishing touches on it now. I tend to work to the last minute, but the format is all in place. I'm just tweaking some of the links in it, but it should be released within the next 24 to 48 hours. If you have ordered from Amazon, then please email me at walt@discoversaipan.com. Send me a copy of the receipt of the order from Amazon, and I'll send you the PDF, not the paperback, the PDF of the 2026 edition. So much of the information is still the same, but there is enough new information and new formatting, I think, to make it even more helpful to folks. Even if you've read the 22, and I've corrected a bunch of typos that I rushed through the last time. So if you have ordered, please let me know. Contact me. Don't assume that I have a list of everyone who's ordered. Just contact me first. Let me know you're expecting your 2026 edition, and I'll send you the PDF of that. Okay, so thanks for that. Let's see. And again, please check out the Discover Saipan website and the saipanliving.com website. And if you're interested in securing a tour, I do have the Discover Saipan website has the Saipan Inner Day Tour, the Tinian to Hiroshima Tour, and the Saipan World War II Pilgrimage, and In Search of Amelia Earhart Tour. So that's something that you might be interested in if you've bought into the narrative that we've all been told about Amelia's official demise. It varies very differently. The story that we tell here on this side of the world on Saipan varies differently from that which you have come to believe is the truth. So great. So with that, I want to thank you guys for checking in. And the live streams are usually on Sundays, Saipan time, and because Saipan is anywhere from 14 to 15 hours ahead of mainland time, It works out to Saturday evening, Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening on the mainland. However, I've had tours these last two consecutive Sundays, so I wasn't able to do the live streams. So next week should be good, or this coming Sunday should be good. So I might actually do another one. But this one today was to make up for the one on Sunday that we missed. So I'll schedule another live stream for Sunday, and we'll do this again. And bring all your questions, and I will see you guys in the next live stream. Thanks for watching.